Welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. I remember that this morning, after talking about matters budget making process, and we were engaging the Institute of Social Accountability. Like I said, it's time to engage the Institute of Certified Public Accountants. And this morning, I'm pleased to have the acting CEO of Institute of Certified Public Accountants, normally known as ICPAK, that is Edwin Makori. They call themselves CPA. Edwin Makori. Why CPA, by the way?
CPA is just an acronym of a Certified Public Accountant. Mm-hmm. But also to us it means more than just the CPA. Mm-hmm. We have a credo for it, which is credibility, professionalism, and accountability. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So there's a stage at which you are said you are referred to as CPA, Edwin Makori, and the rest.
Yes, once you've completed the professional accountancy qualification, mm-hmm, and gone through the mandatory practical experience framework, then at that point you are eligible to be enrolled at the institute and become a member. Mm-hmm. On admission as a member, then at that point you can refer yourself as a CPA. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And ICPAK has been in existence for about 36 years?
We just celebrated our 35 years last year. Mm-hmm. This year is our 36th year. Mm-hmm. Yes.
How effective will you say that ICPAK has been in terms of fostering accountability in this country, considering that you're accountants?
We must say that we are proud, mm-hmm, as an institute to have contributed to the development agenda of this country. We have greatly contributed to the budget making process on a yearly basis. Mm-hmm. We do our budget submissions on a yearly basis. We were instrumental and in the development of the Public Finance Management Act 2012, mm-hmm, that was enacted. The VAT bill that has just been enacted, we had our input, although not all of the inputs that we wanted to be put in that particular bill were incorporated, but we can say that we got our input into that particular bill.
So for the bill enacted, do you think that it is, because I know that a lot of people did not welcome the bill that much, because they feel like it kind of put on them a lot of burden in terms of finances. As it is, do you feel it is okay?
We could say administratively it is a good bill. It is a good act, sorry. There are one or two issues that need to be addressed in that particular bill. I mean, the common mwananchi is more concerned about ugali and milk. Mm-hmm. But you see, we need to be able to see it just beyond ugali and milk, mm-hmm, and look at the total administration of tax. Is it going to be effective or not? And from the institute perspective, in terms of administration of tax, yes, we feel that there was a lot of loophole in the previous VAT Act. But this current act basically provides a consolidated way of looking at the administration of VAT.
What were the loopholes in the previous act that you feel that this particular act has sealed?
Just for a few is just the exemptions that were being done on items. And we could say that the list was too long. Mm-hmm. To be able to identify which particular goods actually were, did that benefit actually pass through to the common mwananchi, mm-hmm, and that was a major challenge that we had, mm-hmm, to be able to look at just your exempting goods, but with that long list that you're giving, mm-hmm, what is the ultimate effect to the common man?
Mm-hmm. Yes. You also talked about the act being administratively sound. What, yes, do you mean with that?
From this particular act, we are looking at it in terms of being able to address the issue of VAT refunds. There was an issue because we had the zero-rated and the exempt goods, that now it brings us to just basically one platform. And that in itself means that how the taxman looks at the refunds is going to be different going forward. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Then when you talk about VAT bill, some of the critics also say that the previous act did exempt a lot of, say, multinational organizations from paying tax, for example, when you talk about EPZ and such things. Do you think this act now, this time round, since that particular law, Paul?
For multinational corporations, I think they have many other concessions within the Act. As they come in. I believe with this particular Act, it's basically it's a consumer-based kind of an Act. And therefore, I believe that they are well taken care of. Yes.
And one of the things the Jubilee government is doing is try to ensure that they streamline the way parastatals operate in this country. And we saw the other day the president making some appointments, of course, and the appointments, some lauding them and others criticizing them. As an institution that you solely mandated in terms of ensuring that there's accountability, do you think the government is on the right path in terms of fostering that accountability, especially, and effectiveness in parastatals in this country?
As an institute within, this is a long journey that you need to be able to walk through. Key to us is to be able to see that the corporate governance in parastatal is adhered to. And with this, what we would have most liked to have seen is competitive recruitment of members of boards for parastatals. The Presidential Task Force on Parastatal Reforms had several radical proposals that if what to be implemented would basically transform our parastatals in Kenya. But we believe that it's a balancing act between the political wing and being able to create good governance. And therefore, going forward, the issue is to be able to engage with the government, to be able to see that good corporate governance is administered within the state corporations.
Of course, that task force did propose, of course, led by former Mandera Central Member of Parliament, Abdulkadir Mohammed, did propose a lot of radical things, among them merging some of these institutions.
It's true.
Do you think that's a remedy of trying to effectivize the way some of these parastatals do work in government?
Although they had a short time in being able to come up with that report within 6 weeks, I think they did a good job. We need to be able to commend them for the job that they did. Basically, what we need to be able to look at is what is it that they were proposing. In fact, their main aim was to be able to segregate how the state corporations are classified. And with that, we looked at commercial entities being into two. The commercial entities that were basically for profit making, and the commercial entities where government has direct control in their operations that have an impact to be able to drive the economic agenda. Then we had state agencies which were basically, some are regulatory, some are meant to be able to give in an impetus into how the government process is going to be carried out. And then we separated into research and education that supports is a core of any economy to be able to provide information, give feedback that now builds capacity for the government. Yes.
And of course, you did talk about competitive recruitment when it comes to boards. Do you mean that the process so far has not been competitive?
Let's face it, we had the Judicial Service Commission being able to interview the Chief Justice competitively. I would want to have seen the parastatal chiefs having to apply for their positions, and let's see them competitively vying for those positions. And we could be able to say that, yes, the person who has been appointed as the chief of that particular state corporation, as the chair of that board, was actually competitively sourced, and it was publicly done so that therefore members of the public can be able also to participate in the process of being able to appoint the parastatal chiefs.
Let's go down to the county level, because I know you're an accountant, and accountants are all about accountability.
Yes.
So far, how will you rate the performance at the county level? Because we are having county governments just a few months, almost a year now, down the line since they came into existence?
I'll want to mention that they have challenges. We appreciate that these are new, and it's a new baby that we are trying to nurture. It's going to grow up and be up on its feet. Mm-hmm. It's not crawling. Mm-hmm. We need to be able to appreciate that, yes, there are shortcomings in our county governments. We could just see by the report that was released by the Control of Budgets, mm-hmm, in terms of expenditure. Most of the expenditures on recurrent, just barely 5% or so is on development expenditure. Mm-hmm. But this basically brings us down to how do we, from the inception of county governments, what structures have we put in place to be able to support the county government? And I think we are in the process of being able to pull these structures that should be able to give us the impact that we need to be able to see on county governments. And I'll say that looking at most of the county governments, the allocation of revenue that they've received is from the national transfer. They are funds that they're meant to generate locally are very minimal. I mean, if you look at, of all the counties, it's only Nairobi that has been able to raise close to 3 billion out of 15 billion budget. And the rest, if you look at their revenue collection, is really below 10%.
But even as we speak about these revenues, the critics say that the common mwananchi does not feel the impact of these revenues, even as we talk about county governments being creative.
We need to be able to appreciate for county governments, there was a consolidation of the local authorities, mm-hmm, that the county governments had to take up. I think as a country we needed to have appreciated that when we devolved into county governments, we needed to have immediately set up structures that will support the county governments. But you see, being the way it is right now, there is a huge expenditure on the wage bill, which is the personal emoluments, that is almost taking 55% to 60% of the recurrent expenditure. Mm-hmm. Therefore, we are living barely 40 to 39% of that recurrent expenditure on the operations of a county government, and to me that is not sufficient enough. And going forward, we need to be able to see the rationalization of the staff in county governments to be able to see that we are able to deliver effective services. As it is, we have the county governments, we have the employees there, but are we able to match and be able to say that this is the way we are meant to evaluate them and be able to derive value for money from those particular employees?
When you talk about wage bill, because I know it's a national problem, even at the national level, you feel the other day Deputy President William Ruto was saying, you know, we are not just going to use a lot of money on wage bill, we need development. And Mwingi Central Member of Parliament becoming even more radical, saying that some of these positions are too many. We need to do away with them, for example, reduce members of Parliament. At the county level, we don't need some of those. Having an MP, having all this. Is it the way to go? When you talk about rationalization, that we eat a humble pie and say, listen, we need to do away with some of these positions?
I look at it from the perspective of first of having a private entity. If you are to be able to set up an organization, the first thing you do is to be able to determine the optimal structure that will be able to support your business. And I think for us as a country, we also need to be able to look at, from the national perspective, what is the ideal structure for us to be able to deliver services to the common man? And then from there, look at our legislation. We've created several positions, but are they supporting the economic agenda? Mm-hmm. And then from there, we need to be able to go to rationalization of the same, so that now we are able to find up a common ground of where the common man is able to derive value and benefits, and at the same time, the people who are providing that services are able to be well remunerated and enjoy from those particular services.
Mm-hmm. Several you've cited structures, and you said that it was important that we put up necessary structures before even we think of setting up this county governments and those kind of things.
Yes.
What will be the ideal structure that you'll want to be in place so that county governments realize some meaningful development?
I'll want to mention that each county is unique in its own way. So even as we look at the structure, we need to be able to look at the uniqueness of the counties. You can't compare Nairobi to maybe Turkana or Marakwet or Uasin Gishu. Those are two counties that you cannot be able to compare. The population dispersion of those particular counties will also be able to determine how you look at the structures that you're going to put in place to be able to offer, to deliver service to the common man. And therefore it means that even as I look at the structure, there's no ideal one fit or one suit structure that I'll say that this is the structure that needs to be able to fit the county government. We need to be able to look at county by county, which is distinct and unique on their own way, and be able to come up with ideal structures that will be able to support that. And I think besides just the structures, we need to be able to look at how to improve efficiency by being able to embrace our information technology to be able to deliver some of these services. We need to be able to partner with the private partnership to be able to deliver some of these services. And in essence, we are not saying that that burden should entirely be on the government, but we could also share that with the private sector, and I'm sure they'll be willing to be able to carry it up. Yes.
When you talk about also rationalization, which I think is important, look at Nairobi County, for example. The governor is saying I only need 6,000 workers. And then the question of the county government hiring and some workers being brought from the national government. How do governors then navigate this delicate issue in terms of ensuring that they have, say, a lean staff, but which can be effective in terms of service delivery?
I think going by the case of Nairobi County, just in 3 months they've been able, their wage bill, out of the total expenditure of 2.7 billion, their wage bill is 1.8. You can see
the balance.
The balance is very minimal to be able to offer any meaningful value service. It's not like meaningful, but it's value service to they're trying to be able to offer that value, but it's not adequate. I think for me it's to be able to look at the governor of Nairobi County by being able to say that, look, are there processes that I can be able to enhance by using other platforms? And being able to see what are these other platforms. And I talked about, can we automate some of these functions that then derive value for us?
But one will say that will be a recipe for unemployment.
There is no way machines can operate on their own.
But it will be minimal. The number is going to be minimal.
It's going to be minimal. But we could also engage these people into meaningful economic development. It does not mean that by disengaging one from an activity, you've completely rendered that particular person jobless. As you do your rationalization, you'll be able to realize that there are other public partnerships that you might get into, and they might take on board some of your employees that you actually would have offloaded to them and be able to utilize them to deliver those services that you wanted them to be delivered. Yes.
Then you also talk about budget making process, and we know county governments are in the process also of making their budgets. Is ICPAK playing any role in terms of trying to come in and give expert opinion to some of these counties?
As you realize in the Public Finance Management Act, Article 137, it forms up what we call the County Economic and Business Forums that are basically to be able to guide the county governments. And part of the composition is associations, other interested parties in being able to look at the budget making process, and therefore it assists the county government in being able to look at their strategy, the county strategy papers, the integrated development plans, and being able to come up with budget being able to go through the budget preparation and the budget planning. And I think we are critical in that in all our counties, we are basically positioned our accountants to be able to provide this particular role. Yes.
And of course, you do it for a fee, more likely?
We are not, this is pro bono services that we are trying to provide to us. We are giving back to the citizens. Yes.
When you talk about counties, of course, there are those who say that as the budget making process gets underway, like I did allude earlier, the participation of the people becomes something that is minimal. Are you also trying to rally behind the citizens that listen, you need to come on board and ensure that you give your priorities to the county government?
Yes, as per Article 2.1 of the Constitution, we need to be able to clearly public participation. The budget making process is not a county government process. It is a people's process, whereby you are planning to be able to derive value out of it on a given period of time. And therefore, we can't just say that the members of county assembly and the county executive committees are the ones who are going to run with the process without taking into consideration the people's views and where they feel that they want to derive value, then that should be able to be incorporated in the budget making process. Yes.
And so far, this being a new concept in itself, in the devolved system of government, what are the teething problems you as accountants you face in terms of giving what you call pro bono services to county governments?
I think the fear is county governments have not been out there to engage the public. That is one of the issues that need to come out very clearly. Then there was the issue of being able to run into, we had our elections in March, and in June, the year was ending over. July, they were rolling over to be able to start a new budget. And I think in that process, there was a bit of hurry in being able to beat deadlines. And therefore, the engagement of professionals and even the public was not as much as we would want to be able to have seen it happen. But I think going forward, that now we're in the budget making process, we need to be able to engage more and be able to see more of public participation, the professionals being able to advise on the budget making process. Yeah.
And you did allude about the report by the Controller of Budget. Of course, some of the recommendations and some of the findings indicting county governments. What will we say that is the best way forward in terms of looking at that report and the best way of trying to ensure that county governments meet the expectations of the public? Because some of these people, the residents of county government, the various counties, if you speak to them, they say we are yet to feel the presence of county governments, despite the system being new in itself.
I think what the county governments have not embraced is to be able to generate their local revenue. Article 209 specifies their sources of revenue, which is basically property rates, entertainment taxes, and any other taxes as provided by an Act of Parliament. But besides that, the same Act under 2094 provides that they can be able to levy charges for services that they're going to render to their members. And I mean, basically looking at a good example of Nairobi County, whereby they've been able to raise only 8.3% of 15 billion. We know Nairobi County has the potential to be able to raise that. But we need to ask ourselves, what is it that they're not doing to be able to raise this? Because that 15 billion means that there are plans that are in place for an expenditure that is waiting for that particular resource to be realized, and therefore create value to the public. The reliance has been basically on national transfers. And most of these national transfers, then you realize that the wage bill is so big to be able to absorb most of this. So we are looking at how the county governments as an institute to be able to say, okay, fine. They've not been able to achieve their targets. So that means that there's an issue of either pilferage or there's an issue of capacity that needs to be able to be looked at. Do they have the capacity to be able to raise those particular, do they have the structures in place to be able to raise that particular revenue? And therefore, being able to suggest ways of being able that the county governments can be able to raise that particular revenue.
You know, when you talk about, for example, Nairobi County, I remember I was trying to have a conversation with formerly one of the councillor sometimes back. And the question I did pose is, every time you hear Nairobi County raising parking fees, but then if they do their own audit, you talk about ghost workers, you talk about a lot of money being escaping through corruption. Why can't you save such loopholes so that you have a lot of money instead of just trying to increase what I call the corruption gap?
And as alluded when I started, I said that we need to be able to look at our structures and be able to rationalize. And that is why I said we need to be able to look at, like Nairobi County, are there processes that we could re-engineer, like automate, to be able to deliver value? We need to be able to see the chain process from collection to the time it reaches the cashier at the county cashier. What happens between collection and the time it's being delivered? What controls have been put in place to be able to ensure that the person who's going to collect is actually being able to deliver that shilling the way it is to the county cashier? And these are some of the issues that we need to be able to engage with the county governments to be able to see, are their processes efficient? If there's inefficiencies in the processes, then it means we have weak structures that cannot be able to deliver value to the citizens of Kenya. Yes.
And of course, we have also seen the number of demonstrations, be it in Mombasa, be it in Kiambu, be it the You and Cry in Busia, talk about the kind of taxes that county governments are introducing. Is it that the public is too skeptical and they don't want a lot of charges, or are the county governments overstepping their mandate?
I don't want to mention that they're overstepping, because this Article 209.3 of the Constitution and 209.4 provides the kind of taxes and charges that the county governments can be able to levy. And I said one of it is property taxes, property rates, entertainment taxes, and any other taxes that will have to be provided by an act of parliament. I mean, for the county governments, I believe the hue and cry in terms of taxes is basically one of the issues that the county governments have not done, and which is provided for in Article 201, is public participation. Being able to explain to the common man why they're levying that tax and what value they're going to derive from that tax. I think once you're able to bridge this gap between public participation and value that is going to be derived from those taxes, this hue and cry will be a thing of the past. Yes. So
we don't conduct what you might call sensitization workshops, for example, before trying to introduce these charges. What you're simply saying is that the public has got unawares of.
It's got unawares, partly yes, and I say one of the shortcomings that we have is that there's meant to be a legislation on public participation, which is yet to come up and be able to guide effectively on the participation of the public. And with that lacuna, then it means that we are going to have the common man continue crying because the level of engagement is not clearly, but that notwithstanding, we need to be able to understand these taxes, being able to be given out to the public and then be able to say what value they're going to derive from it.
And then what should determine the rate at which those taxes are going to be charged? Talk about county government, talk about Article 209. At what rate? Who determines at which rate we are going to say go for cemetery sites, we want to charge this, go for some of these animals that are untaxable for some people. At what who determines the rate?
I think the county executive committee, the member in charge of finance, will come up with the proposed rates.
Mm-hmm.
The members of county assembly then will have to rationalize this, and by rationalization means that they need to be able to involve the public to be able to get the views of the public before they can be able to levy these taxes. And I mean, it doesn't mean that the public views will have to be incorporated 100%, but they will form the way those taxes are going to be levied on the common man.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so when we talk about structures at the county level, because we did talk about we should have looked at the structures before even we contemplate talking about the county governments, but we already have them in place, the county governments in place. Which is the way forward then? Because we talk about the structures which we did not have in the first place, but we have county governments. How do we ensure that the performance of county governments is above board, yet we do not have the structures initially, as your expert analysis will want to put it?
I'm not condemning county governments that they don't have structures.
Yes.
And what I'm looking at is being able to build capacity. What we're asking ourselves, was there capacity to be able to provide those particular services? You and me know the local governments that were there that are now county governments had their own shortcomings. We had issues of reporting that some counties had never reported. So the issue is being able to build capacity within the counties, and I think county governments have really worked hard to be able to build that capacity. The other issue that needs to come out is the reporting framework, that is that they're going to report on, so that you're able to see the accountability of those funds and how they were utilized, and then the value for money for those particular funds.
And then when you talk about that, the issue of also transfer of functions in itself, because, for example, local authority, even before we talk about transfer of functions, there are those counties that say we inherited a lot of burden from local authorities, and talk about the staff we inherited, the issue of rationalization, such kind of problems. Do you see the county governments, even you talk about them building capacity, is it something that Kenyans will have to be patient before we see county governments do something meaningful?
As I said, this is a new baby that is crawling, is about to start walking. We need to be able to be patient, even as a baby grows up. You don't expect them to start running.
Because I know Kenyans expect instant coffee.
Yes, and we don't have instant coffee. We need to be able to nurture these particular counties. They are teething problems. We are in a new dispensation that we are not anticipated, therefore we need to be able to give it time to be able to go through the process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And county governments that set their target, for example, Nairobi, you talk about 15 billion and you raise 3. Now that you don't reach that target, does it mean that some of the programs you had anticipated will come to a stop until you get the other finances? What will be the way forward?
What it basically means is that you don't have the available resources to be able to undertake your intended expenditure. And therefore, it has a direct bearing on the value that is going to be there for the common man. As we said at the beginning, there was supposed to be what we call the county integrated plans, the county strategy paper, and then they come up with the budget outlook paper for the county and the budget policy statements for the counties. We all agree that last year in June, that was a rush process because we were just settling into the new county governments. I need to be able to see that I'm keen to see in this particular year, we as the institute, we need to be able to guide through, to be able to see that maybe some of these targets were not realistic. And but being able to say that, yes, we can be able to have this particular revenue realized, and what are the sources of revenue that are going to realize those particular funds, and what measures are they put in place to be able to ensure that those particular funds are realized.
Critics of some of these counties are saying that maybe some of the governors are taking so much time crafting what you may call master plans, policy papers, and they're not walking the talk. And look at, of course, they cite Machakos. Things seem to be working. What's the miracle that Machakos is putting in place? That the other day they were launching leisure park. The other day we saw security cars. The other day we had a stadium doing what? What is the miracle behind Machakos, and what is it that the other county governments are not doing?
I think for most is a blend of the two, because you have to see where you're going to, and even if you plan for a journey, you have to plan for it. You can't walk today and tomorrow you want to reach point X without planning. And I'll applaud the counties for being able to do the plans. But as they do the plans, they need to be able to see what are the short-term goals that they can be able to implement, that basically we call the quick wins, that they can be able to achieve currently. And then those that are long-term, then they can be able to budget for them and being able to realize them as and when they have the required funds. Yes.
And the question of transition, talk about transfer of functions, what is the county government supposed to be, and what is at the national level? What is the probability that it's also derailing some of county objectives?
For as a government, is a level of preparedness for counties to be able to have the functions devolved to them. Just basically seeing at where the budget, the expenditure and the revenue collection that it is right now. I might want to, as an institute, we want to look at it and say, is it the right time to be able to say that let's devolve all the functions to the counties? And if there are shortcomings, can we first address the shortcomings that are there within the counties, then be able to provide the resources to those counties? And that in effect will mean that now we can transfer the functions to the counties.
So as an accountant, all said and done, and we have deficits in most of these county governments, what will you suggest that are the best ways of, say, meeting the deficit, filling in the gap, so that the development at the county level, because we know what is coming from the national government will never be enough, as it were. So what will be the best mechanisms of trying to balance and ensure that development at county level remain sound?
I'm looking at it as in terms, when you talk about deficit, it means, for us, deficit means something else. It will mean that...
deficit in the context of, you had set a target of 24. And I saw some of the counties that had set a target of 24 billion, say we can try and raise this particular amount out of, say, taxes, like you are saying. But for some, things are not working.
I look at it not being able to meet targets rather than deficits. And I mean, when you plan for that particular revenue, then there must have been measures to be able to collect that particular revenue. It either means that there are either inefficiencies within the system, so that one thing that we need to be able to look at, are there adequate controls that will be able to determine the level of collection to be increased. The other way is just to be able to rationalize and look at, are there other ways of being able to raise revenue? And I'll always give a good example of Kakamega County. They have good trees. Go to Ghana, they have what we call a canopy walk, where citizens go and even foreigners go to do a canopy walk and being able to see the wild animals. And it generates a lot of revenue. I mean, those are some of the initiatives that the county government should be able to come up with.
So that they're not just obsessed with taxing the common person.
The common person, yeah. Yes.
Lastly, as we bring this discussion to an end, Mr. Makori, what will be your message to county governments? Because every person you meet, the expectations are at the county level, and that the county governments are going to ensure that development is at the grassroots. What will be a message to Kenyans and those that are still are really too expectant of county governments?
I think the message that I give to Kenyans, as an institute, we say that yes, we are in the process of developing this baby called the county governments. as much as we want to be patient with them, then they also need to be able to prove to us that they're up to the task in terms of being able to improve their collections. From what you're seeing, that the collections are not yet to the expectation of the common man, so that we can be able to derive value. And also for this, we're looking at in terms of accountability of those particular funds, and basically being able to be transparent by public participation, to be able to tell them that this is how we spent your funds.
And of course, how do county governments ensure that whatever they do it above, in a manner that's going to satisfy the public?
First, by involving the public from the initial process of being able to undertake those activities. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makori, for getting time to just speak to us on KBC Channel 1.
Yes.
Thank you. Have been just have a seat first before we call it a day. I've been speaking to Mr. Edwin Makori. He says I should say CPA Edwin Makori, who is the acting CEO of Institute of Certified Public Accountants, about the county expenditure, and of course coming in to say that there's need to involve the public and county governments try and be creative in terms of how they want to do things at the county level. My name is Martin Mwanji, on behalf of all those who participated in making this program a success, the technical and production crew. Let's do this again tomorrow. Have a good day. God bless.
This weekend on the 15th of February 2014, starting 9 a.m, watch Kenya's world-beating cross-country champions in a duel at Uhuru Gardens in the IAAF Permit National Cross-Country Championships aimed at selecting Team Kenya for the Kampala Africa Championship event. It's exciting, it's captivating, it's exclusively on Channel 1 live from Uhuru Gardens. Channel 1, your true sports partner.
KBC Channel 1, Kenya's watching.